Paragraph 32, often forced to compromise. Paragraph 33, Wilson's desire to promote self-rule was overwhelmed by France, Italy, Japan, and British determination. Paragraph 34, Wilson did reach a compromise involving self-rule when the concept of mandates was established. And paragraph 35, Wilson was more successful in promoting self-rule in East Europe. So again, you're going to write a 25-word summary answering the question, why did the rest of the Big Four resist Wilson's calls for self-rule? So if you follow along, it says, often forced to compromise. President Wilson watched his ideas about open diplomacy and a just peace evaporate as the other members of the Big Four insisted on terms that guaranteed their country's security and economic concerns first. Again, we took a look at the fact that everybody had their own agenda. So while world peace was the overall goal for Wilson and his plans, everybody else wanted to see Germany pay, wanted to look out for their own economies as well as protection for their own borders. So differences of opinions. Wilson's desire to promote self-rule was overwhelmed by France, Italy, Japan, and Britain's determination to maintain their colonial holdings and acquire new ones from the conquered Central Powers. The Italians were particularly determined to leave Paris with the acquisition of two cities, Fiume and Trieste on the Dalmatian coast. A disagreement erupted, culminating in Orlando's departure from the peace conference. Though ultimately Orlando returned to the conference and Wilson was not forced to compromise on these issues, this incident was one example of the challenging struggles Wilson faced throughout the negotiations. Wilson did reach a compromise involving self-rule when the concept of mandates was established. Seen as the intermediate step for the groups on the way towards eventual self-rule, the mandate system called for the Allied powers to secure control over some of the former territories of the Central Powers in an effort to prepare the native inhabitants for eventual independence. So again, as we were looking at the idea during the Spanish-American War, that the Philippines and Cuba wanted their own independence from Spain, this is one of the big points of the that Wilson was making in the 14 points, was that all of these smaller countries that had been taken over as territories by the larger countries were looking for their own independence and their own rule. Millions of colonized people came away frustrated by the lack of independence written in the treaty, but still were inspired by the promise of eventual self-rule. So even though they weren't allowed, the smaller countries that were invited weren't allowed to be a part of the major negotiations because it was being decided by the Big Four, 5 if you count Japan into the mix of things. They were still hopeful that whatever was decided, it was going to work in their benefit where they would have their independence. Paragraph 35 tells us Wilson was more successful in promoting self-rule in Eastern Europe, where a multitude of new states were created out of the defeated monarchies. Poland, Czechoslovakia, the Baltic states, Yugoslavia, and others gained independence. Still, many ethnic groups felt the new borders created by the treaty were unjust, especially those who became a minority in the new states. This resentment was particularly acute among ethnic Germans, who now found themselves in the new states of Poland and Czechoslovakia.